My name is Jenny Keys, 33 years old, and 2 weeks ago my boyfriend of 5 years told me he needed more excitement in his life. At least, that's what he called it. Looking back now, that dinner feels like the moment everything finally cracked open. For years, I thought Ryan Carter and I were building something solid. We weren't flashy. We didn't post matching vacation photos every weekend. We didn't chase trends or try to impress strangers online. We had routines, traditions, and plans. I thought that was called a future. Apparently, Ryan thought it was called boredom. It happened on a Thursday night. Of course it did. Every Thursday we ate at the same little Italian restaurant downtown. The waiters knew our names. They knew Ryan always ordered the seafood pasta and that I always asked for extra mushrooms. I used to think there was something comforting about that. Now I realize I was the only one who felt that way. Halfway through dinner, Ryan put down his fork and sighed dramatically. "Jenny, I've been doing a lot of thinking." The moment he said those words, my stomach tightened. Whenever someone starts a sentence that way, nothing good follows. I set my glass down. "Okay." He gave me a sad smile. "You're amazing. You really are." The classic setup. The compliment before the demolition. "But," Ryan leaned back, "I feel stuck." I blinked. "Stuck? Everything is so predictable." I laughed softly. "We have jobs, bills, responsibilities. That's called adulthood." "No, that's exactly what I mean." His voice sharpened. "Every Thursday we come here. Every Saturday you grocery shop. Every Sunday you meal prep. Every month you update those spreadsheets." The way he said spreadsheets made it sound like a disease. I stared at him. I didn't realize organization was a crime. He ignored that. "I need something more." The words landed heavily between us. "What does that mean?" Ryan looked around the restaurant before lowering his voice. "I need excitement." The answer was somehow exactly what I expected, and completely shocking at the same time. "What kind of excitement?" He hesitated. Then he said it. "I think we should see other people." For a moment, the sounds of the restaurant disappeared. The conversations, the music, the clinking glasses. Everything faded. "Excuse me?" "Not permanently." He said it so casually, like he was suggesting we repaint the living room. "I just want to explore." My chest tightened. Explore? Meet people, have adventures, experience things. I stared at him. "And I do what exactly?" Ryan smiled. "You'll still be here." The confidence in his voice stunned me, as if my role had already been assigned, as if my feelings weren't part of the equation. "You'll always be my home base." Home base. Not partner. Not girlfriend. Home base. A place to return when everything else failed. I felt something cold settle inside me. "So let me understand." I folded my hands together. "You want to date other women while I sit here waiting?" He immediately frowned. "Why do you always make things sound negative?" "Because they are negative." I almost said it. Instead, I asked quietly, "What about what I want?" Ryan laughed. Actually laughed. The sound felt like a slap. "Come on, Jenny." "No. Answer me." He shook his head. "We both know you're happy with your routines." His voice carried a strange kind of pity. "You don't need adventure." I stared at him. "You don't know what I need." "Sure I do." He pointed at me. "You like stability." The arrogance of that statement hit me harder than the breakup itself. For 5 years he had watched me support him through job changes, financial mistakes, random hobbies, expensive impulses. Yet somehow he believed he knew the limits of my world. He thought organization meant lack of passion. Responsibility meant lack of dreams. Consistency meant lack of courage. What he never understood was that discipline had created opportunities he couldn't even see. Because while Ryan spent money chasing experiences, I quietly built freedom. I saved. I invested. I planned. I prepared. The irony was almost funny. The woman he called boring was the only reason either of us had financial stability. Finally, I stood up. I need time to think. Ryan smiled confidently. Take all the time you need. That smile told me everything. He genuinely believed I would still be waiting when he came back. The check arrived. As usual, he slid it toward me, without even thinking, without even asking. I looked at the bill, then at him, then I paid. One final time. Outside the restaurant, Ryan kissed my cheek. Don't overthink it. I watched him walk away. Then I sat in my car for nearly 20 minutes. Not crying, not angry, just thinking. A strange memory surfaced. 3 years earlier, I had created a folder on my laptop. A folder called Himalayas. Every route, every guide, every permit requirement, every photo. A dream I'd been postponing for years. Because there was never a good time. Because Ryan always needed something. Because there was always another emergency. Another expense. Another reason to wait. Suddenly, I was tired of waiting. I drove home, opened my laptop, found the folder, and stared at it. The cursor hovered over a travel website. My heart pounded. The little voice inside my head whispered, "Do it." For the first time in years, I listened. 2 hours later, everything was booked. Flights, permits, hotels, guides, equipment rentals, a month-long solo trek through Nepal. Departure in 48 hours. The confirmation email appeared on my screen, and instead of fear, I felt relief. Real relief. The kind that reaches places you didn't realize were hurting. Ryan always thought I couldn't survive without certainty. What he never realized was that certainty wasn't my prison. It was my foundation, and foundations exist so you can build something bigger. The next day became chaos. I bought gear, completed paperwork, arranged leave from work, called my neighbor, set up automatic payments, prepared everything. By the second evening, I was ready. Before leaving, I walked through the apartment one final time. The place suddenly felt smaller, like a chapter already ending. I grabbed a pen and left a note on the kitchen counter. Ryan, you're right. I've been too predictable. So I'm going. Looking for some excitement. I'll be in the Himalayas for a month. There won't be much cell service. Rent is due on the 1st. Your half is $950. Utilities are your responsibility. Enjoy your exploration. Your former anchor. I stared at the note, then picked up my backpack, locked the door behind me, and headed toward the airport. For the first time in 5 years, I wasn't someone's safety net. I wasn't someone's backup plan. I wasn't someone's anchor. I was finally choosing myself. And I had absolutely no idea that Ryan's exciting new life was about to collapse faster than either of us could imagine. The trek leader laughed when I told him I was traveling alone. No boyfriend? I adjusted the straps on my backpack. He decided he needed more excitement. The man burst out laughing. Sister, you've come to the right place. At the time, I didn't fully understand how true that would be. The first few days in Nepal were overwhelming. The mountains seemed impossible. The air was thinner than I expected. Every step challenged me. Every climb pushed me further than I thought I could go. And somehow, I loved every second of it. For years, Ryan had described me as predictable, safe, boring. Yet there I was, crossing suspension bridges, hanging over massive valleys, and hiking narrow mountain paths, thousands of feet above the ground. Turns out he had never really known me. 2 weeks into the trek, I reached a small tea house with internet access. The owner pointed toward a dusty computer. Wi-Fi. I thanked him. Then curiosity got the better of me. I opened my email. The number nearly made me choke. 187 unread messages. Most were from Ryan. I sat down slowly. Part of me wanted to delete them all. Another part wanted to know exactly how his exciting new life was going. So I opened the first email. Day 1. Very funny. When are you actually coming back? I smiled. The second email arrived a few hours later. Okay, seriously, call me. The third was less confident. Wait, are you really in Nepal? Interesting. By day 3, panic had started creeping into his messages. The rent is due. I thought you were paying it. Can you transfer your half? I stared at the screen. My half? The note couldn't have been clearer. For years, Ryan had never paid attention whenever I discussed finances. Now, he was discovering why that mattered. Day 4 brought another surprise. The internet got disconnected. I need it for work. This isn't funny anymore. I laughed out loud. Several hikers looked over. I waved apologetically. If only they knew. Ryan had insisted on the fastest internet package available because he wanted to become a content creator. I had quietly covered the bill month after month. Apparently he had never noticed. Day 5. Had to cancel wine night. Everyone thinks something is wrong. Something was wrong. He just hadn't figured out what. Day 6. Why is the electricity bill so high? I thought you paid utilities. I nearly rolled my eyes. No. He paid electricity and water. At least he was supposed to. The problem was, Ryan often forgot. Then I'd remind him. Then I'd remind him again. Then I'd remind him a third time. Without me around, those forgotten responsibilities were finally catching up. Day 8 was my personal favorite. The power is off. I'm sitting in the dark. This is abusive. Abusive. Apparently going on vacation qualified as abuse now. I saved that email. It was too ridiculous to lose. The next messages became increasingly desperate. The grocery deliveries stopped. The refrigerator food spoiled. Late fees appeared. His social plans fell apart. One by one, every invisible task I'd handled behind the scenes disappeared. And suddenly Ryan discovered how much work everyday life actually required. By day 11, the tone changed completely. Please answer. I'm sorry. Can we talk? There it was. The first apology. Not for hurting me. Not for humiliating me. Not for asking me to wait while he dated other women. No. The apology arrived when life became inconvenient. Funny how that works. I continued reading. Day 12 introduced a new character, Ryan's sister, Brooke. Her email subject line read, "You're being cruel." Inside was an entire lecture. A real girlfriend would support Ryan's journey. A mature woman would understand his need for growth. A loving partner wouldn't abandon him. I stared at the message, then closed it. Because nowhere in her lengthy speech did she mention Ryan asking to sleep with other women while keeping me on standby. Funny omission. Day 14 was where things got interesting. I'm staying at Mom's house. Do you know how embarrassing this is? I'm 31 years old. I laughed so hard I almost spilled my tea. The irony was incredible. Ryan had spent years mocking stability. Now he was sleeping in his childhood bedroom. Apparently, excitement wasn't paying the bills. The following email swung wildly between anger and begging. One day I was selfish. The next day I was wonderful. One day I was ruining his life. The next day he missed me. Classic desperation. Meanwhile, my own life looked completely different. I was climbing higher every day, meeting travelers from Germany, Australia, Canada, and Japan, sharing stories beside fireplaces, watching sunrises over snow-covered peaks. For the first time in years, my energy belonged entirely to me. No crisis management, no reminders, no financial rescues, no emotional babysitting, just freedom. And then came the email that told me everything. Day 17. Maybe I made a mistake. I leaned forward. You're not actually boring. How generous. Maybe we moved too fast. We? Interesting choice of words. Please come home. I'll even go hiking with you sometimes. Sometimes. The offer almost made me laugh. For 5 years, he had rejected every hiking invitation I'd ever made. Now suddenly, it was a bargaining chip. I closed the laptop and stepped outside. The sunset painted the mountains gold. The air was cold and clean. For a long time I simply stood there, looking at the Himalayas, breathing, thinking. A realization slowly settled over me. Ryan hadn't loved the real me. He loved the version of me that made his life easier. The organizer, the planner, the safety net, the woman who quietly solved problems. The moment that woman disappeared, everything collapsed. Not because I was controlling, not because I was abusive, not because I was irreplaceable, because I had been carrying far more weight than either of us realized. The next morning I received one final email before losing internet access again. The subject line was simple: emergency. Inside, Ryan wrote, "The landlord changed the locks. My stuff is in storage. I need help. Please." I stared at the message, then slowly closed the screen. Outside, towering mountains stretched across the horizon. The path ahead climbed toward Annapurna Base Camp. For the first time in years, someone else's emergency wasn't my responsibility. And as I picked up my backpack and started walking, I realized something else. I wasn't just hiking through the Himalayas. I was walking away from the version of myself that believed love meant carrying another person forever. What I didn't know was that Ryan's collapse was only beginning. Because when I finally returned home, I'd discover he had turned me into the villain of his story. And he was about to learn that some stories don't survive the truth. When I finally returned from Nepal, I felt like a completely different woman. I had reached Annapurna Base Camp, watched the sunrise above the mountains, made friends from 6 different countries, and somewhere along those trails, I stopped being Ryan's anchor. The moment I turned my phone back on, it exploded. Hundreds of emails, dozens of missed calls. Messages from Ryan, Brooke, and even people I barely knew. But what surprised me most wasn't the number of messages. It was social media. Ryan had spent weeks posting about surviving emotional abuse and rebuilding after abandonment. According to his version of events, I was the controlling girlfriend who punished him for being honest. Then I saw his newest post. He had already announced a relationship with another woman. A passionate, spontaneous woman who was supposedly everything I wasn't. I laughed. Then I posted my first social media update in years. Just one photo. Me standing at Annapurna Base Camp with a huge smile on my face. Caption: "Found some excitement. Turns out I'm not so simple after all." Within minutes, Ryan started calling. I ignored every call. 2 days later, he showed up at my workplace. His new relationship had already fallen apart. The exciting woman had left. The apartment was gone. His belongings were still in storage. And suddenly, he needed me again. "You have to help me," he said. I looked at him calmly. "For 5 years I did." His face fell. "This isn't who you are," I smiled. "You're right. Because the old Jenny would have rescued him. The new Jenny didn't." A few months later, Ryan sent one final message. He wanted me to invest $10,000 in a coaching business he was starting, a business about helping people escape restrictive relationships. The irony was unbelievable. I declined. Politely. Life moved on. I joined rock climbing classes, took photography workshops, started hiking regularly. Eventually, I met Ethan, a kind man who thought my spreadsheets were adorable and actually enjoyed being on mountain trails. As for Ryan, his coaching business disappeared almost as quickly as it appeared. The last thing I heard was that he moved to another city to start over. Maybe he found the excitement he was looking for. Maybe he didn't. What I know is this: Ryan thought stability was boring because he never understood how much strength it took to create it. He wanted adventure without responsibility, freedom without consequences, excitement without sacrifice. I wanted something much simpler: respect. And in the end, that simple thing changed my entire life. Turns out I was never boring. I was just building a future while he was chasing chaos.